Does the government shutdown matter to the stock market? Another day of our government not functioning, completely shut down. Today actually marks the 31st day of shutdown. Yet we have a stock market at nearly all-time highs, basically all big tech companies at all-time highs, and frankly, nobody gives a shit. We're about to have the longest shutdown in our history of government, and nobody cares. I mean, in the century, we've only had two as long as 16 and 23 days. And you can see this isn't quite an abnormality. We've had shutdowns in the past and everything worked out just okay, but you would think if our government shut down, our government's not paying federal workers, our government isn't supporting those people in need, you'd think there would be an impact on the stock market, at least in some way, probably negative. And that's why today we have to answer the question, does the government shutdown matter? And obviously we're not being insensitive. There are people out there that are deeply affected by this shutdown, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But first, as always, we need to build some context. We're smart people. We like to rely on data and the numbers telling us a story and painting us a picture. So does the government shutdown matter to the stock market? Does it look over history something like this big red heat map that makes you think you're in Armageddon? Everything's tanking just about everywhere except maybe healthcare and some consumer staples. This was actually taken from a day during the liquidation day, the great tariffs of Trump in April of 2025. So we all know that was quite the dip in the market. Why hasn't the shutdown led to something like this? Is this time different? Because hey, we're all a little bit more happy when we look into our brokerage accounts and we see green. We see our money is going up, our net worth is appreciating. That makes for a good day, a good feeling. We want to see something like this. Well, I guess not Tesla shareholders. This is basically how the stock market has looked. We're pretty much just going straight up. And also the VIX is a way to measure volatility in the stock market. How nervous are people getting? You can see during the great tariffs, the great liquidation day, we spiked up big time. And also this little spike during the month of October during the shutdown, you'd think it'd be due to the shutdown. Well, it was more so due to a couple banks going under. And there was a lot of nerves surfacing about the credit market, whatever. We don't have to get into that, not super important. But what is clear is we really haven't spiked. We've been basically in this lull, really just bouncing back and forth. And when you see something like that with a slight trend down, that usually means the stock market's going straight up. Nobody's concerned. Everybody's getting complacent. They have all their money in the market. All the money they have saved is in Nvidia. Okay, so is this time different? How have other periods of time in the stock market performed during government shutdowns? And we can see that generally speaking, after 100 days, after 1 year, most of the time it makes for a pretty good buying opportunity. Basically every time. Yeah, there's some volatility here and there. I mean, in 2018, another Trump term, you had a 4.5% drop over the next 100 days. Not a whole lot to worry about. If anything, this looks like a buy the dip opportunity. So the data tells us it's buy the dip. Today, we're basically in an all-out uptrend, especially for a few names that we'll get to, namely in the Magnificent Seven, your Nvidia, your Apple, your Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, Tesla. Those companies are all making all-time highs for the most part. And why is that? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's actually relatively simple. You can see that throughout the years, especially since 2022, 2023, remember your ChatGPT moment came in 2023. So ever since then, the hyperscalers, or just think your big tech companies, have been making a lot of money, and they've been spending a lot of money on building out AI data center infrastructure. Now, that's certainly a very good thing for the economy overall, right? We want to invest money into the economy so that we can continue to grow, one, as a society, but two, increase our levels of productivity, efficiency, all those great metrics that everybody talks about. But at the end of the day, these companies need to make money to spend the money that they're spending. We're talking about these big tech companies spending anywhere between $200 and $500 billion dollars on AI data center infrastructure, and we all know where that money goes. It's Nvidia, right? It goes straight into their pockets. Jensen Huang rules this world, and you can see that's exactly where we're going with this. Remember, we're trying to figure out why this time may be different, or why this government shutdown could differ from any of the government shutdowns in the past, because in hindsight, they usually make for pretty good buying opportunities, aside from two small examples here. And if you haven't been following, Nvidia basically is the Midas of the economy. Anything that Nvidia invests in, anything that they say, or I should say, anything that Jensen Huang says on any platform, whether it's CNBC, Twitter, an Nvidia news press release, no matter what it is, if he says it and it's about some small company, that small company's probably going to double, triple, or quadruple in valuation. We've seen it with basically every single company that they've invested in over the past year or two. And we can see they would make for quite the great hedge fund, huh? Their investments have more than doubled from just a year ago. We're talking about more than 100% gain. Jensen Huang and Nvidia, they're not just good at designing chips and making a lot of money doing it. They're good at making a lot of people very, very wealthy and growing the amount of money that they have in their investments. And I can certainly promise you this spending isn't going away. Why are we talking about big tech companies when we're in the midst of a government shutdown? Well, this is why, right here. Simply put, today's stock market relies so heavily on 7 total stocks. We're almost near 35% of the entire S&P 500. Remember, the S&P 500 is supposed to be our 500 most valuable companies in the economy, right? That entire index is made up of just about a third, 33 to 35% of the Mag 7. So do you think that Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Tesla, Meta, do you think any of those companies care about a government shutdown? These companies are making the most money they've ever made in their history, the most profit they've ever made in their history. And they're investing basically all of that into Nvidia and Jensen Huang. No wonder the stock market has been basically straight up. Yeah, there's been some volatility. There's probably been some profit taking as people gear up for either the next leg up in an ultra bull scenario, maybe a blow off top eventually, or are we nearing the top? Nobody really knows. But either way, traders are gearing up and we're seeing some deliberation. But basically, it's been in a slow uptrend higher. This isn't projected to stop. If anything, it's projected to accelerate with time. So if this trend is accelerating and we're in potentially the early innings, as Jensen Huang has said, the biggest and most important industrial revolution in the history of mankind, we can sit here and talk about the headlines and the clickbait stuff all day long. But at the end of the day, is the money there? Right now it is. And this is a crazy growth rate. You're talking about 30% growth in this AI infrastructure spend every single year up until 2030. Who knows only God knows what's going to happen then. And what do you know? It's basically all big tech. It's your Metas. It's your Alphabet, your Microsoft, your Amazon. They're all throwing every single dollar that they can at Nvidia, at their own chips, at developing their own chips to not get completely ripped off by Nvidia when they're selling, $60,000 to $80,000 chips at this point, with their Rubin Ultra platform coming out soon. They're trying to save some money where they can, but obviously the Nvidia system is very hard to get away from. They've been building out the software and network infrastructure moat for years and years now, sipping the Nvidia Kool-Aid. They have to buy it. It's the easiest way to grow and scale their AI data centers. And if you don't have compute, Nvidia systems, then you're screwed. You can't compete in the future. When the first company unlocks AGI, whatever that means, nobody really knows. And if you have any doubts about what the experts on Wall Street are projecting, let's just take it from the guy who understands the industry himself, pretty much has invented the industry, let's be honest. He says that market is going to be 1 trillion by 2028 and potentially 3 to 4 trillion by 2030. Way, way beyond what everybody else is saying, what all the experts are thinking. So this is optimistic. Is he overly biased because he works for a company that sells the products he's pitching right now? Maybe. Or maybe he sees the demand on a daily basis because he talks to all the companies involved with the spend. That's up to you to decide. And so a government shutdown in this context really doesn't mean anything. We'll get to speculating in a second, but again, we like to roll with data around here. So one final point is that the US government has proven, has shown the conviction that they too are in on the AI infrastructure build out. They're willing to take massive investments in American manufacturing companies. And if the government's on your side, then there certainly is some money to be made there. And likewise, we have the biggest company in the world now surpassing about 5 trillion in market cap, also taking stakes in companies. We saw that their portfolio has grown from about 2 billion to 4 billion in a year. They're literally god tier investors. And yeah, is it a self-fulfilling cycle? Yeah, just about anything that Jensen Huang and Nvidia invest in is going to go up. That's just how it works right now. So we understand why this government shutdown, this 31-day shutdown, now the second longest, probably going to be the longest, let's be honest at this point, doesn't really matter in terms of the stock market. So now we get into the speculation a little bit, the fun stuff. We like to rely on the facts and the data, but let's talk about why Trump probably doesn't really care about this shutdown at all. As you all might know by now, Trump in April released this list of reciprocal tariffs that essentially was going to cripple these economies and the United States economies if these percentages actually went through. But it turns out that was just to build some leverage, right? He literally has a book called The Art of the Deal, a book about negotiation. And when you negotiate, you need leverage, or else you really don't have a say when it comes to the end of the deal. The stock market absolutely freaked out. Volatility skyrocketed because people had no idea what the hell to do. But at the end of the day, we pretty much bounced off those lows and made new all-time highs within 5 months. And so when we originally saw the tariffs, we thought, holy shit, we gotta get out of the stock market, because only God knows what's going to happen from here. But at the very bottom of the market, Trump said, or posted on his True Social platform, this is a great time to buy, when the market was all red. And it was probably one of the best times to buy in human history, because less than just 4 hours later, Trump announced a 90-day pause, and the market said, okay, back to all-time highs we go. And this was really the spawn of the taco trade, right? He's gaining leverage on countries, on people. That way he has the upper hand in negotiations. When you have the upper hand in negotiations, you typically get a better deal, right? Another example of how much Trump likes leverage, or likes having people around him that say yes to him. Remember just a couple months ago, we had that jobs report that had everybody freaking out. We had Ted Lieu tweeting out the worst economic jobs report since the end of the pandemic. So people were worried. It was clear that the job market certainly wasn't growing, basically in the past 5 years. And we all know how that ended up. He ended up firing the statistician that provided those numbers because it made him look bad, and he wasn't able to build a case to cut interest rates as fast as he would have liked. And we also know one of his first big steps in office was DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, where they basically wanted to cut down on whatever ridiculous cost was happening within the government. And you can see here they estimate they've saved somewhere in the realm of $214 billion. A lot of money, $1,300 per taxpayer. So with all that being said, they pretty much all fall under this one theme, right? Tariffs get an advantage when it comes to negotiating with countries. Jobs get people around you that tell you that everything's okay and everything's going great in this economy when the job market wasn't doing so great, at least according to the statistics. Is it flawed? Yes, of course. And 3, cut as much government spending as humanly possible. What do all those things tell you about what Trump's intent might be as we enter month 2 of the government shutdown after 31 days, now about to surpass the previous longest shutdown, and no great signs that there's a truce to be made soon? I think at the end of the day, Trump doesn't really care. He's probably willing to push this as long as the stock market's taking off and making new highs, and the jobs market isn't absolutely crashing, right? As long as those two things are fine, then everything's good, right? His approval rate's gonna go up. And naturally, when people see the government is closed and not operating and everything's great, the stock market's going straight up, people from the outside may think, wow, everything's good and our government's not doing anything, so what's the point of a government? Is that scary? Yeah, kinda. But I guess there is some truth to it. If we can operate without the government in session for a month at a time, I guess it does prove logically that there is some inefficiencies to be had there, right? We can see that federal outlays will be $33 billion lower if the shutdown ends this week, $54 billion lower if it lasts 6 weeks, $74 billion lower if it extends through late November. So I guess there's really 2 things we have to point out here. 1, the actual spending of the US government looks lower and is lower for this time because they're actually not paying out people for doing their jobs because they're not working. These people will be compensated at some point. It will take some time, but the money will come. So people are impacted, obviously. The second, in the bigger picture, is that, as we mentioned, if the government continues to stay shut down for, let's say, 2 months, 3 months even, I think a lot of people in this world start to question the importance of a government. You definitely don't want that. We don't want any anarchy nowadays. So obviously it's important that this all gets settled. But in the meantime, with stock markets at all-time highs, the taco trade in full effect, with big tech spending their absolute buns off on AI data center infrastructure, I just don't think Trump is too concerned right now. If anything, it probably gives him an even better reason to lay off more federal employees, because it proves that they don't need as many employees as they currently do. Everything's operating just fine right now. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, because it is easy to think like, hey, the stock market's at all-time highs, yet our government's not in session. It's a little weird, kind of an oxymoron for those things to happen in tandem. So are you still invested in this market? Are you scared of the AI bubble? Will the government shutdown have any impact on the economy, on jobs going forward? And will Nvidia continue to carry this economy? All right, that's it for me. So I hope this video shed some insight onto the actual data and why this government shutdown isn't necessarily different. After all, most of the government shutdowns were really good buying opportunities. This one certainly has been as well. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.